This is a mark of the gods. They put certain things in these buildings to let us know they are not entirely of human origin. They represent something larger than we are.
The builders wanted to make sure that a future generation would know that there's a discrepancy in knowledge. And what I'm suggesting is that all these ancient structures are calling cards left by extraterrestrials.
Ancient astronaut theorists suggest that evidence of extraterrestrial intervention in the construction and placement of these incredible structures can also be found by examining their alignments with the stars.
If I wanted to leave behind a piece of evidence that suggests where I'm from, one way, for example, is by creating monuments that are in the shape of constellations. In ancient Egypt, the 3 pyramids are aligned with the constellation of Orion's belt. The pyramids are not the only monuments that have this particular configuration.
The ancient site of Teotihuacan in Mexico also contains 3 pyramids that are oriented to match up with the belt stars of Orion. And other sites throughout the world have been found to have similar astronomical alignments. Were ancient structures, and even entire complexes, purposely encoded with advanced principles so that future generations would recognize an otherworldly influence? Ancient astronaut theorists say yes, but suggest an even more profound purpose might be revealed by examining these structures from an extraterrestrial perspective. Saint-Jean-de-Mata, Quebec, Canada, May 2016. After extensively studying the manuscripts of the ancient Mayan civilization that reached its peak in 1000 AD, 15-year-old student William Gaddery stumbles across something astonishing. The star diagrams contained in the documents perfectly correlate with the layout of existing Mayan cities.
Gaddery discovered that there were 22 star maps in the texts that lined up with the cities very nicely, 117 different cities. But there was a 23rd map in which one of the cities did not exist on the map. And he was really concerned about this because he felt, wait a minute, this is like a treasure map, and X marks the spot.
Gaddery found it odd that only one star on the maps did not match up with a Mayan city, and concluded that perhaps it really did exist, but had not yet been discovered. With the assistance of the Canadian Space Agency and Dr. Philip, a remote sensing specialist from the University of New Brunswick, Gaddery was able to use satellite imagery to pinpoint the exact coordinates where the city should be.
What they see is absolutely mind-blowing. There it is, a perfect square object. It's clearly angular, it's clearly geometric, it has symmetrical proportions on both sides. This, according to Dr. Armand Laroque himself, could actually be the foundation of a pyramid.
Although archaeologists have yet to visit the site, the lost city was given the name Taakchi, or Mouth of Fire. Gaddery's discovery would seem to confirm that the Maya precisely placed their cities in a way that perfectly mirrored the stars above. An astonishing accomplishment, considering that the territory they occupy spans over 75,000 square miles.
We have the entirety of all Mayan cities. Every one of those cities perfectly gridded out, mathematical precision with star maps. How could a primitive culture have done this?
Ancient astronaut theorists say The Maya were told where to build their cities by extraterrestrial visitors and suggest that this occurred with other civilizations throughout the world. But it was not only the stars that determined the placement of important sites. Many were also aligned with the very energy of the Earth itself. Herefordshire, England, 1921. Alfred Watkins, a landscape photographer, makes a curious discovery. Many of the prehistoric standing stones, mounds, forts, and earthworks in the area fall directly in a straight line extending for several miles. He coins the term ley lines to describe these alignments, which he later finds throughout England and France.
These so-called ley lines actually cross over all of the ancient stone structures, like Stonehenge or Avebury. Something is going on here in which this idea of these lines has some relevance. We see that the Templars borrowed this same science of grid lines during the Crusades and then started to build all of the cathedrals throughout Europe on these so-called ley lines.
Ancient cultures had this understanding that the world has lines of power to it. The ancient cultures understood that these lines of power were almost like sources of energy, and by building structures along these sources of energy, they can almost tap its power.
In 1992, after 30 years of visiting the megalithic standing stones in the Carnac region of France and hearing stories about energetic ley lines, thermodynamics engineer Pierre Moreau sets out to discover if there is any truth to the theory.
And Moreau actually went to Carnac in France, where there's at least 80,000 standing stones. And as a skeptic, he actually measured the energy of these stones and found that these stones actually act as batteries, as coils, as alternators. They store energy, and they also allow the energy to expand at certain times during the day, demonstrating that the stones are built exactly where they need to be to harness that specific energy.
If extraterrestrials instructed our ancestors on where to build their most important structures, as ancient astronaut theorists suggest, was it to exploit the power of the site? Perhaps further clues can be found by examining what many consider to be the holiest and most contentious site on the planet. Chichen Itza, Mexico, August 2015. A sinkhole is discovered under the 1,000-year-old El Castillo Temple. Scientists, worried about the stability of the pyramid, begin extensive examinations of the site. While investigating, they discovered two nested structures contained within the confines of the pyramid.
The pyramid at Chichen Itza is actually not one pyramid but three. These are built like Russian dolls. They keep repeating the same design feature, the same construction method, the same unit of measure over time. So obviously something worked thousands of years ago, and they kept repeating it again and again and again, like a cookie cutter process.
It is a pyramid that's inside of another pyramid. We also see this at the Great Pyramid of Cholula, one of the largest pyramids in the world, just outside of Mexico City. Also, we see this at Djoser's Pyramid in Saqqara in Egypt. So ancient peoples were, for some reason, rebuilding over and over again these ancient structures because they apparently were in a location that was so important. There's something special about that place.
Throughout the world, evidence of sacred sites that have transcended various cultures and religious traditions can be found.
The Temple Mount
is considered holy to all the world religions. The Temple of Solomon was built there. Later, Christianity built their own churches upon it. This is where the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, had a vision in which he ascended to heaven. And it was upon this vision that proclaimed the Temple Mount to be sacred to Islam. But it was considered sacred before the ancient Israelites even came into the land of Israel. We read in the Bible about Abraham meeting a very strange priest by the name of Melchizedek, who was to have had his own temple there. So there was a very ancient connection to this specific place.
In Lebanon, there is the temple to Baalbek. Later, under Greek control, they built a different structure on the same foundation stone and called the area Heliopolis. There are cathedrals throughout the world that had pre-Christian foundations. We have it all over the world, which means that a sacred site has a power of its own that is larger or older or longer lasting than any particular tradition. The thing is, the location is what's sacred.
Could it be that much like the locations of the Mayan cities that are mapped out based on a cosmic grid and the ley lines in England, these worldwide sacred sites also connect to a larger blueprint? The origins of the idea of a world grid can be traced back to ancient Greece.
Philosophers like Plato were very adamant that the ancient sacred places were specially positioned along the face of the earth in a very deliberate way, and they conformed to what's called a world grid. The temples were not placed haphazardly, they actually had a structure and purpose to them.
In the 1960s, researcher Ivan T. Sanderson plotted out his own planetary grid based on Plato's work. Other world grid researchers would later build upon his model.
What they identified was that there was a geometric pattern that could be superimposed on the Earth, and that grid point usually started at the Great Pyramid itself, and they would go out from there in a geometric form.
Russian researchers did a full survey of all of the large stone structures that had ever been found all over the Earth. A total of 3,300 different stone structures. And they found that every single one of them was built right on one of the lines of this geometric pattern
On this grid, sites like Stonehenge in England, megaliths in West Africa, the Bermuda Triangle, pyramids in Mexico and in Peru, islands like Easter Island, the bizarre city of Nan Madol were also matching this grid.
The specific power spots where we find pyramids and obelisks and other structures may have not been chosen just by chance. It could well be that they are part of an integrated whole, and their location is highly, highly important. Some researchers speculate that ancient cultures around the world connected all of their temples to each other almost like a master circuit board, where one temple connected to another temple, connected to another, added to the power of the structure, added to the power of the line itself. When we think of the power grid, we think of energy being transmitted along this grid. What if there's something else going on here? What if there's something bigger that we're not seeing? What if this world power grid is actually receiving energy from the solar system or from the universe itself?
Who is it who's overseeing this larger picture of all of these structures on the Earth? They're somehow looking at the Earth from space and seeing how these structures would fit on a large scale around the globe. Who could be doing this except for extraterrestrials?
If the placement of structures on Earth were specifically plotted to serve an extraterrestrial function, might parts of this system still be online today? And if so, does it serve a purpose beyond Earth? Auckland, New Zealand, 1997. Retired military and commercial airline pilot Bruce Cathy publishes his book, The Energy Grid. In it, he details his experience observing UFOs during his time working for the New Zealand military. He noted that these crafts were always following straight lines. After mapping them, he discovered that they followed a distinctive grid pattern. Additionally, while flying over some of these zones, he also noticed that various structures were actively being built along the paths.
Bruce Cathy maintained that the American military, starting in World War II, had also figured out this special grid that surrounds the entire planet, and that the military was using certain spots on the Earth to build military bases and other structures.
Cathy suggested that the extraterrestrial craft may have been drawing power off the grid, and that after World War II and the Roswell incident, military personnel around the world had become aware of this UFO connection.
So here we have an ancient grid structure, probably built by extraterrestrials, possibly to power their craft, that's now being reconstructed today by the military.
Could it be that ancient structures throughout the world were designed to function together as part of a massive energy grid? And did the architects intentionally leave behind information for us to find once we had the technological knowledge to recognize the system? But why? What were the alien architects trying to tell us?
Extraterrestrials knew that at some point in our evolution, a technologically advanced society would stumble across all of these ancient sites and see their correlation, thus forcing us to take into consideration that some type of extraterrestrials showed our ancestors where to build these things, not for them, but for us.
The grid itself may in fact be a source of unconventional energy that we are not necessarily utilizing with our technology now. An advanced intelligent race wanted to leave something behind for us to discover that would give us the clues to a greater level of science than we now understand.
It could be that this master architect sought not only to influence the Earth, but also to connect the Earth to something greater or beyond our imagination. Perhaps this grid even extends out into the stars, and the world grid of the Earth connects with the grid of other planets as well, and then integrates the Earth into a huge colony, if you will, or integrated circuit throughout the cosmos.
This will be profound for planet Earth when this grid network is repowered, and we don't know what effect it will ultimately have on our future. Maybe this will be the time when the extraterrestrials return.
There are those who believe that the discovery of an ancient energy grid will offer a quantum leap in human achievement, because by harnessing the energy of the Earth, we will not only advance beyond our planet, but far beyond the stars, and anything we could ever imagine.
Oh, 为什么我一直在碰到墙壁的东西？ 我的 fuck！我真的跟你闹哦，拳头紧起哦，你以为要结束的呢？真的知道哦。What the fuck is wrong 啊？车呢？
คุณเดินทางมาถึงจุดหมายปลายทางแล้ว
建筑。